Behind every one of my records is a story. This is just one of them. All right, so here we go. Another video. This one is Talking Heads. The album is 77, but the song that we're going to talk about is Psycho Killer. All right. So I got to mention first how I came to know the Talking Heads. Now, I guess this was, man, when was this, dude? Probably in like 1986 or 87. Uh, yeah, my parents, they were divorced already. My dad was living alone. And so he rented a couple of rooms out, mine and my brother and sister's rooms. He rented it out. There was two rooms. So he had one roommate who was like a student at the university in Santa Cruz. And there was this other guy who I think he might have been a student too. He's like a surfer dude. I remember because I went to go visit my dad and like I saw a wetsuit hanging in the backyard. I was like, what the hell is this? He was like, oh yeah, I rented out this room, your old room to this surfer dude. I'm like, all right. And so, we were talking and I think he said something like, he's like, hey, he's like, yeah. He was telling me about this dude. He's like, yeah, he's, I think he's going to the university and, he's got like a part-time job and, he's not really here that much. So it's a good deal for me. And, he was telling me, yeah, he listens to a lot to this band called Talking Heads. And I thought that was so funny because I've never heard that term Talking Heads before. Now obviously I know it's like a political term, which, is to describe all of the people who are talking in media, saying things that aren't necessarily correct, just talking a bunch of noise, that they are the talking heads of politics and of news and media. I just thought that was funny, like talking heads. It just, to me, it sounded so stupid. I'm like, what the hell is that? Talking heads. And so anyway, I didn't think any more about it. And I think probably when was it? Oh, that's right. So I knew who the Talking Heads were, but I didn't really think about it because they had a hit. What wasn't it? Burning Down the House. That was the first Talking Head song I think I consciously heard and knew about. But this was on the radio. They were playing on the radio, and I didn't really know it was by the Talking Heads because I didn't pay enough attention to know who it was by. I just recognized the song because it was a hit. Burning Down the House. That was played on the radio a lot back in those days, So anyway, so I didn't know who Talking Heads were. I was familiar with that song, but it wasn't until, my dad was telling me about this kid who was listening to Talking Heads that I was like, that's hilarious, dude. What the hell kind of name is that? And so anyway, then as like I said, a year after that, then I started to where I worked at. I worked at this pizza place, man, and there was different students that were working there part time, and that's where I got turned on to a lot of different music because, in Santa Cruz, there's a university and it attracts students from, all over the country. And, so they come to to study and they get these part-time jobs. And a lot of these students were working where I worked, part-time as a high school student. And, but they would, they would play their music at this place and, I would listen to it. And then the name came up again, Talking Heads, and I'm like, Talking Heads. I'm like, you got Talking Heads? They're like, yeah, you want to hear some? I'm like, yeah, put it on, dude. Let's see what's up. And the song that I heard, the first song that it was on a cassette, because we used to play tapes at this place. And when they played the cassette, dude, it was from this album, and the song that came on was Psycho Killer. And I was just thinking, I'm like, dude, this, I mean, I heard Burning Down the House, which I thought was kind of, it had this attitude, which was, it was kind of silly, but it was also kind of like crazy. Like it was like, man, this guy sounds like demented, you know? Not like silly, because silly to me is harmless. This kind of silliness was, it sounded dangerous, dude. And so he's playing this song, and I'm listening to this, and I'm like, then I made the connection. I'm like, oh, dude, these guys, the same group who did Burning Down the House. And I actually seen that video too, which I still didn't remember the name for some whatever reason. But then when I heard the song and I heard the guy's voice, I was like, ah, this is the same group. This is the same voice. And this is the same attitude, which is like deranged, like, you know, psycho. And the name of the song is Psycho Killer, dude. So I'm like, oh man, this is crazy, man. Cause, you know, before I heard that, I was a fan of Devo. And Devo also had this kind of like, they were kind of goofy, but also kind of dangerous, kind of punk rock. You know, like their humor was, it was kind of dark, you know, kind of just dry, kind of like deranged kind of humor. You know, there's like this, there's the kind of psycho where like someone is like, "Hey dude, I'm going to kill you." And then there's this other psycho where someone is like, "Hey man, I'm going to mess you up." Like, you know, getting all like Joker crazy. And so I kind of associated this vibe with like, you know, kind of like deranged, psycho, crazy, but like also kind of nerdy, man. Because let me show you these dudes. All right, so if we turn this around, check them out, dude. Okay, so you see these dudes and that lady. They don't look like psycho killers. I mean, that's the first impression. But if you look at them again, they kind of look like they have the potential to kill, dude. I mean, they look like they're just not to be trusted, you know, I guess. So, and I'm like, okay, so now Talking Heads, I guess, become the representatives of this kind of like new, it's kind of more punk than metal, or because metal and like hard rock, that's just kind of more like, I don't know, this kind of more masculine, like where this is also edgy, but it's kind of coming from a more like of a mad scientist or like some crazy serial killer kind of like, you know, closet case kind of thing, you know, which is also dangerous, man, and has this attitude where it's like, oh man, this is raw, dude. This isn't just like, you know, candy coated stuff. These guys are a little twisted here, a little bent. I mean, look at them, dude. Kind of crazy. So, let's see. So I got this record. at Logos. Let's check out the label. Sticker. All right, so you see, got so I got this record for $2 at Logos. You know, I mean, most of these videos I think are gonna be from Logos, dude. So yeah, I got this for $2, and I must have gotten this, I would say, probably in the late '80s, and I saw it there, and I'm like, Talking Heads, there they are, Talking Heads, dude. I looked on the back, and I saw on the song list, Psycho Killer, and I'm like, that's the jam. That is the kooky psycho jam. I gotta get it. I need to have it because it stood out to me when I first heard it, and it's legit. It's worth having. So I bought the album, and $2. I mean, back then most of the records I was buying that weren't like new records, the new records I was buying back then when I was buying records at my peak were pretty much hip hop records, new 12-inch singles, new albums, full length albums. And because I was DJing and I needed these records to play at the parties and at the clubs and stuff, because like I said, if you didn't have the song on vinyl, then you couldn't play it. You couldn't put it in the mix because my chosen format of equipment was 2 turntables and a mixer. Straight up hip hop DJ. Later, when CD, controllers came out and stuff, then a lot of people were using CDs, but I was still using vinyl. I still got vinyl. I don't really DJ anymore, but like publicly at parties and stuff. But I definitely still have my equipment, and I still cut it up, when I have time. So anyway, dude, this record, I got it. I'm like, yeah, dude, cool. $2. It's all on me. I bought the record, and I'm like, all right, now I got this. So later on, when the internet came out and stuff, I started to like look up more about Talking Heads, and yeah, it turns out they were, one of those bands from CBGBs that, really like stood out and, actually became significant back then, influenced a lot of bands and artists and stuff. And I understand because when I listened to them, like I said, the first impression for me was Burning Down the House, which was, that didn't sound like anything else. And this Psycho Killer song also didn't sound like anything else. So I knew they had something back then, and obviously a lot of other people did too, so much to the point where they were influenced by them. And it's just common knowledge that Talking Heads are, significant in music history, So anyway, Talking Heads, that's the record. I got it, part of my collection. I'm glad to own it. All right, so that's that. If you guys have any comments, go ahead and feel free to say what you got to say. You can like this video, and you can also subscribe to the channel if you're into that. Otherwise, catch the next video. And until then, peace and vinyl.